Hello, friends. This is Robert Bevan, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking about the spell True Seeing. All right, this is I don't know. This is a spell that seems like it's more useful than I'm thinking about it right now, but I'm probably never going to use it because I don't know. Tell me about this spell, Sam?
Okay, so True Sight is a mechanic that exists in Dungeons and Dragons. It basically says, because the spell just says you have True Sight, it doesn't tell you what that does. What True Sight does is lets you see normal in magical darkness, see invisible creatures and objects, automatically detect visual illusions and succeed on saving throws against them, and perceive the original form of a shape changer that is transformed by magic. You can also see onto the ethereal plane within the range of the True Sight. It's a lot of things that it does, and every single one of them, its objective is removing a fun element of the game, and that annoys me. I don't like that this spell is a one-stop catch-all to illusions, invisibility, ethereal, all of the problems. It lets you see all of them. You just prepare one True Seeing, and if you have True Seeing, you beat the problem, and if you don't, sometimes it beats you. And I think that is not a great way to sort of create a solution to a problem. I don't think that's a great tool to just full catch all a bunch of stuff that no longer works.
I'm going to disagree with that because, I mean, all right, one, it's 6 levels, so it's pretty high up there. 2, it's only for the caster, right? I mean, this doesn't grant everybody the True Seeing, right?
True.
And yeah, I think there are spells like darkness or whatever, or illusions, or yeah, if you're willing to spend a 6 level spot, then yeah, you win. You get to see through that.
So that right there, that mindset of, oh, you cast a 6th level slot, you win, I find to be frustrating. I don't think that's a particularly fun game experience. A lot of what I like about Dungeons and Dragons is you're presented with complex problems and a toolbox of stuff that doesn't innately solve it on its own, but when combined with your friends, whenever you come together with some creativity and some neat little ideas, you can create solutions to those problems. Well, True Seeing,
well, let me stop you there. But this isn't something you're always casting. This is something you have to make a choice to do. Like you're still going to be hampered by these things until you make this decision.
It's not so.
It's not like I'm not going to walk into any random room and say, I wonder if there's secret doors or ghosts or whatever, and just randomly cast this.
If you're going into a dungeon and it has an hour duration, no concentration,
Yeah.
and you are at the upper tiers, it is a very low cost to cast True Sight. A sixth level spell may seem like a tall order, but when we're talking about tiers of play that get plus 15th level plus, it isn't a very tall ask. And the fact that there can no longer be, it puts you, this DMs in this situation, right? You knowing your players have True Sight means you have no real reason to throw illusions at them anymore. You have no real reason to use invisible creatures in interesting ways. You have no more reason to use a lot of effects that True Sight mitigates and negates entirely. There's no fun problem-solving element of figuring out which is an illusory entity because this spell simply says that is the illusory entity. A lot of the effects that this is mitigating are puzzle effects. A lot of the effects that this is mitigating this is now a tool that we have to fight a thing. This is a tool that defeats the thing. And I find that to be particularly frustrating. See Invisibility has this problem in the lower tiers, but at least See Invisibility is confronting a problem I often think that is more annoying than the problems the True Sight is solving. I think illusions are really interesting. I think things like hallucinatory terrain is really interesting, especially as a narrative tool to sort of explore the world. And having an ability that can be lower level than the upper cast versions of illusion spells that just defeats them, I think is stupid. I think that this doesn't necessarily need to do all of those things for it to be interesting. At the very least, if it had concentration or something attached to it, if there was a way for this to go away without having to kill the character outright, then you could have a little bit more back and forth. But the fact that this isn't even concentration means once it's up, you auto know that's all illusion. And you can automatically tell everyone else that's all illusion. And while you might be able to say like, oh yeah, well, everyone doesn't have it, if everyone's grouped together, they functionally do. If everyone is grouped together and you can communicate, you will know what is real and what is not. And I don't necessarily love that. I don't think that's a particularly fun experience and will just lead to the DM saying, oh, they have True Sight. I no longer throw these problems at them.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced that's going to be as big an issue as you're making it out to be.
It's a subtle issue, I think.
Would it make you feel better if it was like a 10-minute duration instead of an hour?
I think the fundamental nature of True Sight is functionally an issue. I think that it being a catch-all solution to a lot of interesting problems, I don't like. I definitely don't think I'm in the majority of people. I think a lot of players are going to find a level of safety net in True Seeing. I think there's going to be a lot of people that find that this alleviates problems that are largely annoying. And largely just like this isn't a fun mechanic to interact with anyway, so let's not interact with it. And that's what True Sight kind of does, is say illusions magic is frustrating. I don't like being told something is something that it is very much not that. At the same time, I get that merit, and I get that there are people that find those elements frustrating. Having a solution to the people that do enjoy it, though, I think isn't that fun. Like if you're in a group and you like the illusion puzzles and you like the invisibility puzzles and you like fighting things that are on the ethereal plane and having to figure out and use your wits and use mundane resources to fight things like that, to figure out who in this group is the shapeshifter, having someone just say, okay, I cast my 6th level spell slot and beat it, that takes away that experience for that player. That takes away that experience for someone that could have enjoyed that environment. I don't love that. And even if this were a minute, even if this were an action, it obviously gets worse based off the spell slot, depending on those durations. Obviously, the power level of it can change. But I think the fundamental solving of a problem based off of a binary, based off of you can or you can't, isn't that cool. It's, again, like see invisibility. It's if the problem is finding the invisible rogue, see invisibility goes, there they are. And that's the only solution to the problem it solves. It doesn't do it in any other really interesting or meaningful way. And I don't think that's that fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it depends on the dungeon master. Where
yes, that will always.
I feel like, yeah, a dungeon master who is okay with this spell is probably one that's going to be, he's got like this like contingency plans or something, where or he's just got encounters where like, all right, sometimes you cast this spell, it's going to work out for you. You're going to see a secret door you didn't see before. Good for you. Sometimes you're going to go that hour, you're not going to see crap, and you just blew a 6th level spell, and it might make you think twice in the future.
But so let's look at that situation then, right? The situation of, if I cast this 6th level slot, I solve a problem or it does nothing, I don't think is that fun. I don't think having an option that is an all or nothing that this is a particularly fun experience. If you're a player and you're casting a spell,
it's not fun when it doesn't work.
And this spell asks the DM to make it not work. Whereas there are other spells that ask the DM to challenge the use of it.
Is giving random scenarios. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't. It's
So a lot of magic in this game always will do something and sometimes will act better. That's, I think, where magic is at its best. I think spells that always have an effect that you will be able to use as a tool, like fly, for example. Fly is something you can always cast on yourself that will always do something. You will always be able to fly and have a use case for it. But it also has situations where it is very good, where you want to be flying around to get a specific height advantage, to get to specific areas. And there will also be times where it's worse, where if you lose concentration and fall to your death, that's a real outcome that can happen to you and you can't use them there. But it will always have the ability to do something. True Sight is something, much like, again, see invisibility and a lot of these other binaries, counterspells very much in this boat. If you aren't in an environment where it is usable, it is uncastable. And when you are in an environment where it is good, it is solving the problems and beating them on its own. There isn't a real middle ground with True Sight. There isn't a real middle ground with counterspell. It is either game shifting, warping, problem solved, or it is unusably garbage, completely uncastable. And I think that leads to more frustrations than it deserves. I think it's a really insidious, small little problem that isn't actually going to irritate a lot of people. I don't think most people have a problem with things like True Sight and See Invisibility. I don't think they're like contentious spells or anything to that effect. That is where I think their problems are, is that they lead to play patterns where people are frustrated that they're not able to do stuff, that their characters aren't the arbiter of all knowledge and can see into the darkness and see invisible creatures and have the fantasy of being the diviner that this is promising. It leads to those characters not feeling like they get to do anything because the DMs falls back on different solutions. Like, oh, you used that to solve a problem before. I'm not going to have that be a problem anymore because I know you can already solve it. I'm going to challenge you in different ways. And then your whole character feels like they don't get to do anything. Whereas if your character solves problems with Fireball, you're always going to be able to find some use case for Fireball. You're always going to find some use case for Magic Missile. You're always going to be able to find some use case for Fly. This
is your more interesting solution, is blow everything up with Fireball.
It is blowing everything up with a fireball isn't always good. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it isn't. And this, you have a better spectrum there. You have more use cases and more interesting ways to challenge someone with fireball than you do to challenge someone with true sight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking on maybe a different level where but that's another element of the game. It's a gamble. Yeah, maybe this is going to do nothing. It's probably going to do nothing. If I have no reason to suspect there's an invisible thing here, or then maybe I shouldn't be casting this.
Then you're put in this position, right, where either you're
That's a position. That
time.
Position is part of the game. It's part of the decision-making economy there.
I don't think that's an interesting decision, is where I'll land then. I think the decision of, oh, we're going to fight shapeshifters, I prepare true sight, is interesting. Oh, we're going to fight invisible monsters, I prepare true sight, because then the problem is solved. Whereas whenever you're going to fight undead and you prepare protection from good and evil, that doesn't solve the problem. It helps, but it doesn't solve it, and this solves it.
Yeah.
If you're going into the upper tiers and you're like, we have to figure out who the lycanthrope is, this solves that problem. That's no longer a problem that is able to exist.
And in that situation, that makes things boring.
And I think this is that kind of effect, right?
I think not always.
I think most of the time, like you just said, most of the time you don't want to prepare this because it may do nothing, and no one likes to cast something that does nothing. And when you do cast this, you know ahead of time it fixes the problem, right? So the times you would prepare this is when it is at its least interesting.
If you know that somebody is a lycanthrope, is it the butler? Is it Mrs. White? I don't know. Then but I don't know. Yeah, shame on the DM for putting you in that confined a situation. I don't know. That's
shame on having an interesting puzzle that's solved by a spell that exists.
I don't know. That seems a little contrived to me.
Sure. I will absolutely say I'm nitpicking way more here than normal, because I think this spell otherwise is just a mediocre spell. It's never going to appear on anyone's spell sheets. If I were, again, building this game from the ground up, true sight wouldn't exist.
All right.
I don't think it's good for the game.
Are we done?
I mean, can be.
Yeah. All right.
That's all the spell really does. So.
Oh yeah, I think we've discussed it thoroughly. We went around in circles a couple of times. Sam score?
Unfortunately, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5 in that it defeats a lot of problems, and you have to DM around that sometimes, and I think that's annoying.
I'm giving it a middle ground 3 out of 5, even though I like it more than you do.
Sure.
All right. That was True Seeing. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.